How to Score Your First or Next $1 Million Gift. 104 easy-to-understand pages filled with strategies, best practices, and homework assignments is now available in both print and digital formats through Pathway, our book distributor, and Amazon. Quantity discounts are available to nonprofits who want to share books with teams of management, development staff, board, and volunteers. The book becomes available on November 12th, 2024. But for those who pre-order, we have a special offer. Just click on the URL link in the video description and reserve your copy. We'll send you a complimentary copy of our first book, 10 Simple Fundraising Lessons, a $16.95 value that provides a solid foundation to understand how to best apply the lessons highlighted in the new book. That's 2 for the price of 1.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin, and as founder of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my privilege to welcome you to our nonprofit empowerment webinar series. This is episode 128. It's something we haven't done before, a virtual book launch. My mother told me anybody can write a book. You're not an author until you write a second book. And I'm real excited about writing a second book. And it's called How to Score Your First or Next $1 Million Gift. And I'm a little compromise that one of the other guests has written 27 books, but we'll get on to that later. We continue with our podcast series. And if you see this link here, this will take you to a nomination form. And our producer is John Largent, who is one of the leading podcast producers in the world. He has produced over 5,000 podcasts. And to give you some perspective, more men have walked the moon. And John, I think we just recorded number, 21. And so it's a very simple nomination form. And so please continue to nominate people you see as professional and volunteer nonprofit leaders that you consider heroes. And as I said, our book became available on November 12th, and we have a special deal. If you, we've extended it to, by the way, November 15th is National Philanthropy Day. And if you click there, we will, you will get this book, and we will give you our first book, 10 Simple Fundraising Lessons, which will give you a sound basis for understanding how to score your first and next $1 million gift. I'm going to bring some of the others in. I don't usually share slides, but I wanted to share a few highlights of this. But first, let me introduce the guests. Marv Roy, as I call, is my brother from a different mother. We met, about 10 to 15 years ago. And all I know, we have more virtual and personal contact every year. So either we're foolish or we're smart. Marv founded a organization that I'm so proud to be associated with, the Institute for Philanthropic Excellence. And Marv, could you take a minute and explain what the Institute does?
In a minute. We've served over 100 nonprofits of all shapes and sizes and missions over the last 10 years. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary. And we make possible what a lot of other consulting groups don't care about. We want to work with the little and smaller to middle-sized nonprofits to give everybody an opportunity to grow their reach and their capacity and their missions. And very proud to have said that we've done a lot of good work, have helped raise $500 million over those 10 years for nonprofits coast to coast.
Okay, by the way, we're going to show everyone's contact information. Next is Randall Luna, who I like to refer to as the millennial side of my brain. She is a incredible multitasking She is what now? An ancient 36 years old and 37. How old are you?
No, that's correct. That was right.
Okay. You're old enough to run for president, so keep that in mind. Okay. And
Okay.
she is director of corporate giving and special events for a wonderful nonprofit called SAFE, based in Austin, Texas. Can you take a moment and tell us about SAFE?
Yes, I'd love to. So SAFE, our mission is an acronym of our name. It's Stop Abuse for Everyone. It started as a rape crisis center that then merged with the battered women's shelter, that then both merged with the children's shelter. So over its 50-year history, we've developed a really beautiful, holistic set of programming that provides wraparound support for survivors of all kinds of abuse for life.
Great, thank you. Next, we're going to bring her in more fully, but Mitzi Perdue is our journalist and virtual residence. And I don't know how to describe her literary accomplishments, except to say she's written 27 books, so I'm 25 behind her. And I asked her how many columns you've written, and she didn't have enough batteries in her calculator. So she said, since her focus on the Ukraine, she has written 449 stories, and that's in 3 years. And she is the founder of a wonderful project called Hidden Healing Wounds. Could you take a moment and just tell us about that project? And then we're going to have you talk a little more extensively later.
Okay. The name Hidden Healing Wounds has sort of grown. A partner in all of this is General Petraeus, and the name got changed to mentalhelp.global. And what we do is, in Ukraine, the WHO estimates that there are 15 million people with mental health issues like insomnia, rage, panic attacks, just on and on. And there's just a brutal gap between the ability to match people with mental health issues with mental health providers. How about it's impossible? So Mental Health Global is trying to use artificial intelligence, large language models, local training to have culturally sensitive and Ukrainian psychiatry approved ChatGPT kind of help for people with mental health issues. But that's not what I'm going to be talking about later.
Okay, we're going to pick on you a little later. Finally, it's a good friend of this show, Marjorie Hope, who is the bestseller author of Connect Diplomacy, but her nonprofit is called America Connected. Could you take a whole 1 minute and tell us about America Connected?
So America Connected connects people and nations around the world closer together. And currently, we're able to do a lot of different programs from college students to adults, Learn and Lead, College Connect, and then we also have our connection through the world. And it's basically teaching people how to connect through our differences, because we're not all the same. We have different ideologies, and we have different religions, different beliefs. We all eat, we all sleep, and we all have to go to the bathroom. So we all have more in common than we realize.
I tell you what, as we age gracefully, we're reminded of all those things more profoundly each day. Thank you, Marjorie. We're going to bring you in a little later. Okay, let's talk a little about first $1 million gifts. And I'm going to bring in folks from the panel. The first thing is, remember, put yourself in the shoes of a donor. The donor is not choosing between the good and the bad. They're choosing between the good and the good. And your nonprofit and your project, for even a gift of $1,000, let alone $1 million or more, really has to stand out. It has to be distinctive, okay? And you have to make claims that all these other good nonprofits can't. Marv, in addition to first $1 million gifts, you've been a pioneering force in helping organizations conduct their first capital campaign. Before that used to be the exclusive territory of national and really large nonprofits, and you kind of opened the door so smaller and more modest size nonprofits can conduct capital campaigns.
Right.
Describe what's it take for an organization to launch a first capital campaign?
More than anything else, it's the desire to take your work to another level. I used to have a kind of little ditty that I used when I used to present and still present to organizations of smaller size and impact. And it was especially true, and Jim and I first met when we were working in the community and technical college sector, which falls right into that world. I used to say that the organizations have done so much with so little for so long, for so many, so well, that they really never took a minute to think about doing it differently. They fell into that trap of just accepting the lot that they were given in their life. So the first thing that has to happen in organizations, if you're going to pursue $1 million gifts or whatever that big gift is that, that somebody dreams of, is to start thinking in terms of what you would actually do with a gift of that size. What work would come of that type of support and generosity. I've had the great joy in my life of mentoring and working with a lot of fundraisers, young and old, and in various parts of their careers. And one of the questions that always comes up is, what's the one thing that you have left on your bucket list, or is on your bucket list in your early days as a fundraiser? And everybody always says inevitably, I'd like to get $1 million gift. That's kind of the number. That's the benchmark. That's the portal to bigger and better things. And my first response back to them is always, have you ever asked for one?
Yeah.
So the second piece of that equation is you have to ask for the gift.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
It's tough to get one if you don't ask for one, right?
That's the beauty. The first rule of fundraising is somebody has to ask somebody to consider making a gift of that magnitude or any magnitude, whether it's $10 or $100 or $1 million. People don't wake up in the middle of the night with a checkbook on the nightstand and wake out of a deep sleep and say, I should make a gift to that group tomorrow. And the third piece kind of goes off of this group aspect. And Jim and I, we've talked about this many times. People don't generally give to organizations. They don't generally give to programs. People give to people.
Yeah.
If you're going to have success in raising gifts in general and larger gifts specifically, you have to have a relationship.
Yeah.
You have to build a trust. People don't write $1 million checks to people they don't know, that they don't feel comfortable with, that they don't know if they should trust them, that they're going to do the right things with their hard-earned money. So all those things kind of come together in the magic that we call fundraising. And $1 million, one of the questions that you ask all the time in your training is, what's a major gift?
Yeah.
So a lot of the organizations that we work with, $5,000 or $10,000 is a big gift.
Yeah.
They're not even thinking about millions of dollars. And I had the great joy of working early in my career where I cut my teeth in fundraising at Skidmore College, one of the great mini Ivies in the United States. And that's where I had that great moment in securing $1 million gift. And for those of you Bostonians or people in New England, that gift came from a great older woman who was in her 50th reunion class. And I remember like it was yesterday, she said, we're going to set the record for giving to this institution from our class. And I'm going to start it off by challenging my class to match my $1 million gift.
Oh my God.
And I'm in my 20s. I'm a young pup learning the trade. And it was, you don't forget it. Here I am now, 64.
I can tell you, Barbara's right. You don't forget that moment.
No.
I want to tell our audience, at any time, if you want to join the conversation, which we highly encourage, there are 3 ways. You can type into the chat space. You can type into the Q&A box. Even better yet, you can raise your hand. And our producer, John, CEO of Largent Media, who's been our partner since day one, will give you audio and video privileges, and we can get to see your pretty faces. And I like to ask a couple of questions right now to take sort of the pulse of the audience. And this time you just type it into the chat space. First one, type in yes or no. We have secured $1 million gift. Type in yes or no. Second one, type in we are ready to secure our first $1 million gift. Type in yes, no, or no opinion. Finally, this is going to take a few more words. And again, everyone here wants to be responsive to the information and the knowledge that you want to gain over the next hour. What do you want to learn most about securing your first or next $1 million gift? Okay, I'm going to move on here. And again, we want to bring at any time, if you have a question, again, type it into the chat space, type it into the Q&A. Better yet, raise your hand, and John will give you audio and video privileges and will bring you on the screen. Now, here's the good thing. For those of us who've been in this business longer than we'd like to admit, the process and the mechanics of raising $1 million or $100 million is the same identically to $1,000. We call it discovery, cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship. Discovery is identifying who are the most likely donors to your cause. And as Marv was saying, a key thing is, why do you think they'll be interested in you? And do you have somebody on your board, your staff, your other donors who can make a personal outreach to them? Because that sometimes people say they're terrified of asking for the gift. It's kind of breaking the ice sometimes. It scares people the most. So the first step is discovering who are your most likely donors. And after you've done that, you want to forge a personal and emotional bond between that likely donor and your cause and your mission. And there are lots of ways. There are meetings, there are site visits. Marv will teach you if you want, if you ask for money, you'll get advice. And if you ask for advice, you can get money. So we learned during the cultivation phase, people love to be asked for their opinions. What do you think about the problem that your nonprofit is trying to solve? And finally, the third step is asking. And most money, there are different ways you can ask, but statistics will show the overwhelming majority of money comes from individuals. Last year, it was 2/3, 67%. And it comes in face-to-face meetings, okay? Face-to-face meetings. So it's solicitation. And then finally, the fourth step is to recognize and thank them for their gift, whether it's $1,000, whether it's $1 million, whether it's $100 million, because you want to do such a great job with that donor. You want to turn around the cycle and ask them to consider renewing their gift and ask them even to increasing it. Now, a lot of people, I want to bring Marv in this. I'm amazed. Of course, Marv and I and Randa made careers because most people are terrified of asking for gifts. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's a little wisdom, would help for me, help pay a mortgage. It's really not that complicated. You basically talk a little about the story of a nonprofit. And I always like to do it fairly early on. I have this paranoid feeling that everything we do in life, we run out of time. And so if you guess, if you're lucky, you can get 40 minutes for a meeting with a leadership donor who makes $1 million gifts. You're going to be lucky if you get 40 minutes, okay? So I like to put the ask on the table in the first 10 minutes. And really, it's not that complicated. You ask for a specific amount for a specific purpose. we just don't ask Mitzi, would you consider making a gift, a specific amount for a specific purpose? It could be a project, it could be your general fund, it could be a capital project. And then this is something that's so key, you zip it, you remain silent. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly here, where people get nervous, where we'll ask, Mr. Roy, would you consider a gift of $10 million to help build our new library? And there's a little silence. And I've been with presidents of universities and chancellors and foundation chairs. They get nervous and they kind of say, oh, that's probably too much. They defeat themselves. No, the person's thinking. Respect them enough to give you an honest response. Likely is they'll probably have questions, okay? And they'll ask you to do research, which is good. I'm going to skip through a couple of slides here. When we were talking about cultivation, this is a clue. Money follows time. The more you can get personal meetings with your prospective donor, that's a very solid indication that you're going to be in a strong position to ask for a gift. To the extent that you don't get their time to meet and they keep on delaying it or whatever, that is also a very solid indication that that's probably not a very probable donor. And something we have learned, I want Marv to come in here, and he knows, Gerald Panis, who was probably the greatest fundraising consultant of all time, who passed away, I think, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, his book sold more copies than all the rest of us put together, okay, as far as a fundraising expert. He said 80% of the challenge in getting a big gift is just getting a meeting. Marv, could you talk a little about your experience and the challenge of getting the meeting with the really big donors?
Yeah, and I think I probably have 5 or 6 of Jerry's books right behind me on this bookshelf. The art of asking is one that everybody talks about, and but there are other ones that you just they were the standard that everybody else kind of measured themselves against. Yeah, I mean, look at the people that have had great success in the world and have been successful in accumulating wealth are generally busy people. And the known philanthropists, people who would call themselves a philanthropist, maybe put it on their LinkedIn or their Facebook page, are busy with lots of inquiries. People, if you're known, people are reaching out to you all the time. And many of them have gatekeepers. They have people to kind of buttress,
Is that gatekeepers or wall keepers?
Well, it's whatever they need. We hope they're gatekeepers so the gate can swing a little bit and let us, nudge through the opening. But yeah, you need to be as creative in trying to get their attention. And it isn't, you don't just jump to making the case for the organization or the program or whatever the specific thing is you're hoping that they'll support. You've got to just get their attention, and you need to be thoughtful about that. You need to meet them in whatever ways you can possibly do that. Maybe that, as Mitzi was saying earlier, you go to certain events with an intention, and then sometimes you leave with something you didn't even expect to have. Not, we don't all end up getting husbands or wives out of that type of a deal, but you might meet somebody who wasn't even on your radar screen. So most fundraisers go to lots of things. We don't just go to our own events. We go to every other event that we can possibly get into and meet people, because the greatest thing that we have, that we offer each other, is relationships, and you build those wherever they make themselves possible. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know what the number is, whether it's 85% of the process. It's a big part of it. And usually by the time you get to the table, you're already halfway to the gift. Yeah. Because you're in the door. And then people wouldn't waste your time and theirs if they weren't at least a little bit interested, or at least a little bit inquisitive about what you're inviting them to be a part of.
Yeah. In real estate, they have a saying, the biggest factor is location, location, location. I say in fundraising, it's closing, closing, closing. When you ask for a gift, You can hear yes, and you say, yes, there is a God. You can hear no, and as Mark points out, no can have different nuances. Could be no, not at this time, not for this project, not at that amount, or more often you're going to hear we need more time. They need to consult with family members. They need to consult with partners. They need to consult with legal and financial advisors. And it is so important that you be diligent and so thorough in your follow-up, okay? And when you leave a meeting, the most important thing you can do, and someone says, let's follow up, is to set a specific date, such as December 6th, okay? 2 p.m. at your offices, okay? Right. What you don't want is the 13th of November, okay? So it's all in fundraising, it's in the closing, and the closing. I wanted to take 5 minutes, and then I'm going to ask Randa to talk about some of her experiences. These are some of my first $1 million experiences. That's me. My hair is a different color. I probably still have that suit and tie. But the first $1 million gift to the University of Texas at San Antonio actually was from a leading Chinese leather manufacturer in the year, actually, I remember the moment we got it was December 4th at 11 a.m. Central Time, 1998. And it was from a leather manufacturer in Hong Kong, 8,300 miles away. Let's talk about, and it was that he had a long time relationship with my boss, the dean, that dated back to the 1970s and when they were playing different roles. And constantly, since then, this is Richard Liu. He has given a total of $5 million. But again, I remember December 4th, 1998 at 11 a.m. What I want to do, he said, you guys, I asked him, this is interesting. I had gone on probably about 100 asks with my boss, Dr. Jim Gatner, who was dean of the College of Business, and he never let me ask. But I got to hear him over and over again. He was a master. This time we're asking for $1 million. He goes, Jim, I think it's going to do more for your career than mine. He was such a great mentor. He let me ask for that $1 million gift. And then Richard Liu goes, so you guys want $1 million? He says, why not? I wanted to scream in joy right then and there. I couldn't contain myself. And my dean just winked at me, played a little more cool. So that was the first $1 million gift. This next donor could not have been more different. She was a military army colonel decorated and was a surgeon, a very, very Dr. Janice Mendelson. And, you would never know, she lived in a very simple apartment for the most of her life. She drove a Toyota Corolla, and her love was folk dance. And she said she had a dream. She said, remember, she would organize folk dances in Vietnam during the conflict, okay? And she said, if you had the partner of a folk dancer in your right hand, and in your left hand, guess what? You can't hold a gun. And so she brought it as a basis for promoting harmony and understanding between different cultures. And she gave us $2.2 million. And I was proud there. I picked up a relationship on Mr. Liu. This is one that, and I have to thank my wife, Andrea. We spent a lot of Saturday nights. She liked simple food, and we would go to a diner. She would have the same meal, probably for the three of us, that it was under $20. That was my big whining and dining. And I had to earn her trust. and we received $2.2 million that paid both for the current operations of the Folk Life Dance Center and then put in place an endowment that would perpetuate it over time. When I started at the Community Colleges Foundation, and that's my own writing on that name badge, we had not received the $1 million gift yet. And there had been one, we were starting a satellite campus in Kerrville, Texas, which is 60 miles west of San Antonio. And there was a giant in the business community called Mr. Neil Griffin. And they had been talking to him about $1 million gift, I don't know, for over a year, okay? And they couldn't get to agreement. And I've never been scared of writing. And so it took about 6 months. I would pack up my laptop and meet with his foundation representative. And paragraph by paragraph, we handed out the agreement for an initial $1 million scholarship. And then he went on to give us another $0.25 million that I was very proud of. And again, it took several meetings. We wanted to identify how we could work together to achieve the most with that. And I'll be honest, the first thought he was to put more money into the endowed scholarship. But guess what? Well, that first $1 million, this happens. We had trouble awarding to it because the scholarship criteria were so narrow. So we were able to honestly work with him and loosen up some of the criteria and have him also put other components in this $2.5 million gift. The final one is Mr. Harvey Najum, who is a philanthropist that is no less than a force of nature. He has given in the San Antonio area over $200 million, okay? And he plans to hit $250 million. And I use this example. Sometimes it's not you. It's a member of your board, a member of your team, a member of your staff. And I was very lucky to have who I hired, and I'll take credit for that, a very talented major gift officer named Deborah Martin, who begun that relationship and slowly opened to the door in which I came in, and we were able to get a $2 million gift from him. And by the way, when I decided to make the pivot from practitioner to consultant, he was the first person I visited with, and he was so supportive of me. He's participated in 5 of my live workshops. Here's one that we used to conduct at the Microsoft store in San Antonio, or virtual. We had as many as 150 people, and it helped put Eskin fundraising training on the map. And so let me move first to Randa Lunar as a millennial. I think, Randa, you're ready to talk about 2 first $1 million gifts. One was for the Austin Opera, and another one was for SAFE. Could you take a few minutes to talk about your first $1 million gift with the Austin Opera?
Sure, yeah. So I worked for opera for several years, and I was here at the Austin Opera for 4. And before I ever even got there, my colleagues had started to cultivate a relationship with the Butlers. They're a major philanthropic couple here in Austin. We've got the Butler School of Music at the university here. So it was a good relationship to begin with, which is where it all starts. And then when I arrived, we were really pushing to start a Spanish language programming initiative. We weren't sure what it looked like, but what I found, and it took the rest of those 4 years that I was there before we finally got it. But what I found was that we continuously had conversations with them and kept bringing it up, just this project, this initiative, and here's the progress we've made, and here's what we're planning. And all the while we were continuing to update them and kind of help gently foster their connection to that program until finally
I'm going to interrupt just for a second. There is a fine line between persist and pester, and every fundraiser has to find that fine line with their major gift donor. And it sounds like you found that line.
We were walking it. No, they've been so gracious the whole time. And finally, they came through in a much bigger way than I think any of us expected. We got our $1 million gift, but when that ask was made, they kind of surprised us and said, and we would like to go ahead and give another 2 million to start you an endowment for this initiative, because we've been talking about it now probably for 6 years total. So they were so excited after hearing about it for such a long time, and they were already big supporters and they sponsored us a lot. I think they were just as excited as we were. And then we were really excited with those gifts that really kicked off that project.
Okay.
So.
And how about, did we cover SAFE?
Not yet. SAFE is a different one. This is kind of me telling you the secondhand story, but I do know SAFE, right as I started my work with SAFE this past summer, was breaking ground on a new apartment complex that will be affordable housing, or free in some cases, and it will be permanent for residents in Austin, 120 units. So it's a major housing project, and there was a lot of, county funding involved. There was a federal grant involved, but we still needed a bit to make up the difference. And not only were we looking to finish construction, SAFE services are so holistic, as I mentioned earlier, that the people who live in these apartments are going to need support services like the counseling, the legal advocacy, the peer support groups and things while they're there. So we need to be sure that we're funding ourselves in a way that we can maintain that once we get started. So in comes HEB. If you don't know HEB, they're a major grocery chain around here in Texas, and very philanthropic.
And let me amplify, they rule Texas, okay? It's very hard to compete in Texas with HEB, and they've moved into Mexico.
Yeah. Well, they're already pretty avid supporters of SAFE. And so I think that, again, it was a case where over time, as we were building that relationship from whatever they started out donating 5,000, and then, another few years go by, and then they're up to 15 to 20,000, and then they're doing $25,000 sponsorships for an event plus an extra gift. And over all that time, again, SAFE was talking to them and providing impact reports and regular updates about what we're doing and how we really want to kick off this housing project. So when it came time and we said, well, what we really need is one more big $1 million gift to make sure that we can kick off this project, they were happy to step in. I'm impressed.
Hey, Marv, you talked about Skidmore. Does any first $1 million gift to a nonprofit that you were either working for or consulting for come to mind?
Well, fortunately in my life, given that I chose this as a career like you and Randa, there have been many, and I won't say that there have been so many that they all blend together, but happily, it's an occurrence that we experience often in campaigns. And as you know, when you start getting into campaigns of 5 or 6 million or more, you really need to secure $1 million gift if you're going to have certainty that you're going to get to that loftier number. So we ask for almost every campaign that we're involved with, those more than 100 over the last 10 years, and many more than that over the 15 years that I've been doing consulting. It's a regular occurrence, thankfully.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's a game changer, both internally and externally. I think the biggest thing in fundraising, you got to believe it's possible. And after you achieve that first $1 million gift, it's like a good housekeeping seal of approval.
Yeah, and they're not always checks written from private
books. Go ahead, Marv.
No, I was going to say, they're not always checks written from private bank accounts. Sometimes they're gifts. I did a project in the Midwest with a soccer organization, and they had a gift of this beautiful piece of land that was valued at $3 million that jettisoned the campaign forward. Foundations, and whether they're private or community, often will do challenge gifts of certain magnitude, and sometimes you'll get a larger gift that will encourage and inspire others to follow.
Mitzi, I didn't warn you about this, but that's me. You shouldn't, after all these years, you should know it. How engaged have you been in fundraising? We're going to talk about your generalist side in a second, but I'm going to pick on you. How engaged have you been in fundraising, and what's your attitudes towards it?
Yeah, my whole life. And I'm
Okay,
going
well,
to,
that's, here I ask you, what have you found works and what doesn't work?
great. I'm eager to share it with you. And I'm going to take it from a different point of view. My father was the co-founder and president of the Sheraton Hotels. We have a family foundation. We did sell the company, but we still invest together, and the foundation still exists. My late husband, Frank Perdue, chicken guy, also has a foundation. And then in my life, I've been in the boards of other foundations, and that's given me some opinions on what works and what doesn't work. And Jim, I think you're going to be pleased to learn that when I read your book last night and loved it,
Thank you.
that I'm agreeing with absolutely everything you said, because here's what I've learned from, the other, I do fundraising, but I'm also on the receiving end of requests and solicitations. And the first thing that I'd say, and it does, I believe, match exactly with what you say, I believe that the odds of somebody sending in a solicitation, they read that there's a Purdue Foundation or a Henderson Foundation, and you send in a request, I think the odds of it's being accepted are pretty much zero. And I've been on the boards of directors of these, and if a solicitation comes from somebody we don't know, there's no chance of it being accepted, no matter how brilliantly written, no matter how compelling the case, because we are going to make decisions based on, is this person for real? Do we trust him or her? Do they have a track record? And further, if you go after somebody who's famous, and Frank Perdue was famous, at least in the East Coast, it may surprise you to know that at least while he was alive, he passed away in 2005, but while he was alive, we employed 3 turn down specialists. And that is, people would write in asking for money, and the turn down specialists, had the directions to answer promptly, make the person feel important and valued, and say no. So that's what you're up against when you just pick somebody out of a list and think you can get money. It's not going to happen. So the other half of that then is, and again, I'm repeating what you preach, but this is my experience.
No, repetition works.
Yeah, what works? Let me share with you what I've seen works. Supposing you have a target person for your charity. The big question is, how do you get to that person? And the first thing that I would do is at a board of directors meeting, I might have a list of 6 potential donors, and I would ask everybody in the board, do any of you know anybody? Or do you know somebody who knows them?
Yeah.
And then another thing that I would do, and I do, is I bet a week doesn't go by when I'm not attending some kind of conference. And I do it for networking, because when you get to meet people and you get their business cards, and here's just a little extra credit thing. I have observed that many people aren't as intentional about networking as I think one should be. And what I'm about to describe, I learned from Frank Perdue.
Yeah.
Would be at a conference. He'd end up, he'd be like almost the first person there, and he'd make sure that he met and had shaken hands with pretty much every if it was 100 people, he would have shaken hands with 100 people. He also would have, at the end of one of these, he'd probably have 20 business cards. And then here's the thing, everybody gets 20 business cards. What he would do would be, when he'd get the business card, he'd write what he might be able to do for that person, just something, he'd write it in the card. And then that night, I'm tired and I want to go to sleep, not him.
Yeah.
He's sitting at the desk recording each person. And because, 3 days later, you've forgotten what it was about, but not Frank. And his follow through was just extraordinary.
Wow.
So that is my recommendations. And I told you I would take 5 minutes, and
I want to ask you,
I have
actually,
4 seconds left.
okay, make good use of them.
Okay. Let me turn the alarm off.
And actually, I have 2 more questions for you, so don't.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, you've been on both sides of the equation. This is my favorite question for someone like you. Which do you think is more difficult, to ask for money or to decide who gets the money?
Frankly, for somebody with my personality, I find it painfully hard, and therefore I particularly liked your book. I got the PDF and I liked it so much that I actually ordered it on Amazon this morning.
Thank you.
Because I thought for somebody who's, I mean, I don't think I come across as shy, but deep down the idea, it's terrifying of asking for money, but nevertheless, I need to do
That's
it.
human. That's human nature.
Yeah, so, and as for turning people down, I've had an awful lot of experience at this.
Yeah.
It's my superpower, I know how, but to ask, much more difficult for somebody with my personality. I mean, if you could give me a personality transplant, I'd take it.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have that superpower. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
but
talk about.
you
Let's talk about.
have made the book available, and it's gonna, Amazon Prime said that it would deliver it to me tomorrow, so I'm
Good.
probably in good shape.
Well, hey, you've written 27 books, a gazillion articles. What motivates you to decide what you read? Okay, and what tells you this is a good book?
Oh my gosh, that's a difficult question because, you know, one of my premises is uh, read everything. That,
Yeah, you sound like my wife.
Yes, she
but
does.
on the other hand, when I come across a book that's just going to be really helpful to me in my life, woof,
Yeah.
no trouble deciding on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta admit, I was moved by Bob Dole's autobiography. You know, you mentioned that Bob Dole was the matchmaker with you and Mr. Purdue.
Yes, I will love Bob Dole to the end of my
You
days.
want to know, the word hero is overused, but he definitely was a hero all his life.
Mhm.
And I had a chance to meet him, not like you, and didn't agree with everything, but I love the way he loved this country, and I love the way he served this country.
And I'm totally on board. For those of you who don't know, I had volunteered in 1988 to work in his campaign, and that's how I met my late husband.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, let's bring in Marjorie Hope, America Connected. You all are ready to secure your first $1 million gift, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, but let's move else. You have a year ahead of schedule of me. You launched a best-selling book on Amazon called Connect Diplomacy. What have you discovered works and what doesn't work in promoting a book?
So everything can work if you work it right, but you have to identify your target readers
Yeah,
and understand who's going to benefit the most from your book, the demographics, the interests, the reading habits. And also, I think you need to clarify your book's unique appeal. What makes your book special? There's a lot of books out there.
oh
And
man,
develop a one-line pitch that captures it. And most importantly, you need to develop an online presence
yeah.
and you need a
Can
website.
you talk a little about you? Because I wake up and I catch up with Marjorie online. Talk about your commitment to online presence.
So if you're doing it right, and I don't know if I am, it takes about an hour because you've got Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube. And I post on everything, and everything has different specifications. For example, TikTok is going to be a little shorter version versus YouTube, it likes a little longer. And anyways, but once you get the hang of it, you're getting your word out to thousands of people.
Yeah,
Social media does work, and you
yeah,
will see comments from people. Where do I get your book? I never thought of that before. That's a great idea. Once in a while, a negative one, but for the most part, people really want to learn and they want, and it's fun. And you have to, but it's a lot of work too. You've got to, for instance, I've got 3 Facebook pages. I have my personal one, my book Facebook page, and then my nonprofit Facebook. But there you go. You can post 3 of those right there in the morning.
yeah. Okay. You know, Missy, I don't know. 27 books. which one was your favorite? That's an unfair question, but again, I'm in the business of asking unfair questions.
Well, actually, it's not unfair. My absolute favorite was my biography of my late husband.
Mm,
Frank Perdue, there was so much to him that you wouldn't guess if you had just seen his advertisements.
yeah.
I loved writing that, but I also wrote one on Mark Victor Hansen, who he was the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And
Yeah.
he's in the boy, get him on your program somehow. He is in the
Okay.
Guinness Book of World Records for selling 500 million books.
That's a lot of books.
But the amount of effort that he put into it, oh,
Yeah.
it was like, I think it was like 130 publishers turned him down, and he kept going for like a year and a half until one
Persistence,
finally
right?
accepted him. And it was really fun to write about somebody so fascinating.
Yeah. Hey, let's pick on you a little more since, but your writing habits, do you have a favorite time of day? Do you have a favorite place, or it's whenever you have some breathing space? What's your ideal venue for writing and space for writing?
Okay, I'm a big believer that that people have different times that work for them. I'm a
Yeah.
morning person, ideally, but it doesn't happen all that often. But uh, I'd be up at 6 in the morning and working till 12, working
Yeah.
till noon. I just feel my brain is sharper, and then I have something that I recommend to anybody who wants to do writing. It's a quote attributed to Mark. I was about to say Mark Victor Hansen, but I'm meaning to say Mark Twain.
Yeah.
He said, if your job requires you to eat a live frog, eat it first
Yes,
thing. And
I love that.
and if your job involves eating 2 live frogs, eat the biggest one first. And
Yeah.
I figure that my whole life is kind of revolves around, I
Uh,
think that, I mean, my subjective impression of myself is that I'm a pretty industrious person and I get a lot done. But the way I get it done is I just plunge in to eat the live frog. And for me, why is writing a live frog? Because it really takes discipline, and it'd be fun to lie in bed and read the newspaper till noon or something, or answer emails. There's just so many calls in your time. But if you've just determined I'm going to eat the live frog first, and that means like writing 1,200 words. And then another habit for writing that I'd recommend to absolutely everybody is I write in 5 stages. The first draft, I don't allow myself to make any corrections. I don't polish it. It's the creative part is completely different from the editing part where you try to polish it and make
Yeah.
it better. And so people sometimes ask, how come I could write so many books? It is, I have a scheme, and that is I work in the morning, and
Yeah.
that's what I do.
Yeah. That's your job, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Or that's
that,
your passion. How about that? That's your passion.
yeah,
It's a
let's go
passion.
with passion, because
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned that I'd written a lot of stories about Ukraine. Those are live frogs, because when I go to Ukraine, I'm interviewing war crimes victims. I'm usually there as the guest of the Ukrainian police, and they're the ones who document war crimes. So I'm writing the human side of the war in Ukraine. And it is something of a live frog, because I'm getting into some extraordinarily dark places, but I try very hard to end it so you feel uplifted with stories of courage and resilience and pride in their country.
I'm going to drill down a little more as we're wrapping up here. I'm just curious. You probably produce more words on paper than anyone else I've met in my life. I'm sure there's some others. You mentioned him, but what is your preferred equipment? Do you work from a desktop, a laptop, a tablet? What
I actually,
computer equipment do you use?
I if I'm home, I work at a desktop, but I'm
Okay.
also married to my laptop.
Yeah.
If I'm in a taxi, I'm probably working. If I'm in a
Ah,
plane, I'm working. I I'm actually no fun.
yeah.
I really like writing, and I really like
Well,
working.
you don't believe in downtime, do you?
Uh, Actually, I argue with my significant other over this, because he's kind of into a balanced life. And
Yeah.
I quote back at him, nothing great was ever accomplished without passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I said, I'm no fun, but there we are.
No, I think you're fun. And this has really been a learning. Let's go around. Marjorie, you've done so much writing. Do you have a favorite time? What's your secret to being productive in writing?
I 100% agree with Mitzi because I swear by the frog rule, and I have
Yeah.
done that always, and it works. And if you discipline and dedicate yourself to doing that, it all works and falls into place. But I traditionally like to do mornings,
Yeah.
and then if something in the night kind of spurs me on, I might write a few notes, and then I'll polish it in the morning.
Yeah. Marv, you're on the run so much, but what's your preference for doing your writing? When and where?
Yeah, well, I've had so many different experiences. I've written different types of things. I'm a published author in the sense that I wrote a guide for the selection of young ball players to all stars, and that Babe Ruth Baseball now recommends that as the #1 instrument in the world for leagues to use, and leagues in all 50 states use it. So that's kind of my claim to fame in
Wow.
writing. But I wrote a lot of thank you letters. I think when I was
Yeah.
town and county supervisor for those 8 years, I probably wrote 5,000 thank you letters by hand in little notebooks.
Wow.
And that was fun. That was my way of connecting with my public and letting them know
By
that I
the
can.
way, I'm going to sound like a Grinch, but to all of you, I know there's a place and a growing place for artificial intelligence, but I don't think there's anything more human and personal to writing.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I don't like abdicating that to artificial intelligence. You know, I know 10 years from now, things might be differently. Randa, you're a millennial. What's your preference in getting your writing done?
Well, I'm also a mom, so I like to do that at night. Once kiddo is down and I finally have the quiet, then I can, I can finally hear myself think, and that's when it can pour out and I can finally create something. So I'm a night person.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Jim, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
I just wanted to say that it's been an honor for me to be a part of both of your books.
Yeah.
They
And by
are
the way, Marv honored me by writing the foreword, so I appreciate that.
it's wonderful to be able to do that. But I really want to encourage people to spread the word, because there are so many books on shelves that aren't readable. The self-help books, and these are kind of help books, aren't readable because they're too long. They're too. These books are entirely readable, and they are wonderful for board members, for staff members who are just overwhelmed with everything around them and all that they have to read and absorb. These can be read, and Mitzi kind of alluded to this. They're a fairly easy read, and you
Yeah.
get the point, and they drill down fast. And I
Exactly.
strongly recommend that these become permanent parts of people's libraries.
Well, I'll tell you, when I moved in from institutional practitioner to consultant and giving a lot of presentations and writing, my intent was victory wasn't having people think, oh my God, is Jim Eskin brilliant? But rather, that's so simple, I could do it. So that's the touchdown for me, to convey it in a way that people believe they can do it. Okay. Let me share a little contact information. This is how you can reach Marv or Roy. And as I said, by the way, it's such a very rich website. I encourage you to go there. This is how you can reach Randa Luna, who, by the way, I've had the privilege of proofing some of her early writing projects. She's completing a PhD now. And I've encouraged her to take it, adapt that more for lay audiences. And I've loved, this is a writer, you need to be writing more for broader audiences. Now, I know the PhD committee is important, but you got to promise to write for broader audiences. And finally, our journalists and virtual residents, she mentioned the hidden healing wounds. And I encourage you, she talked about, 449 articles on the Ukraine. You can go to the website right there and find all of them, I think, huh? Marjorie, give your, I'm sorry we've had you on this show, but why don't you give your website while you're here?
Marjorie Hope at itsmarjoriehope.com.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, this is what we're going to do. I want to thank our guests. I want to thank our learning community and particularly all the professional and volunteer nonprofit leaders. Every day you do something significant that improves and saves more lives, especially helping those who are struggling. And you're the ones who inspire all of us here. So thank you for your great work. And what we're going to do, we are going to talking about social media. We are going to post a 1,300 character space summary of this discussion. And it's 1,300 character spaces because that's the limit for a LinkedIn post. I know the other Facebook gives you more space. And then our wonderful producer, John Largent, is going to do a magic spin dry. And we're going to post this recording and put it on social media sometime tomorrow morning, okay? I always tell John if I was swimming or walking, I usually get back about 9 a.m. and he always gets to me pretty soon. So to Marjorie, to Marv, to Randa, to Mitzi, and to our learning community of nonprofit leaders, thank you. We're going to have a pre-recorded show on I'm sharing what I've learned in fundraising. Actually, I'm going to be interviewed by John Largent, who, by the way, has interviewed people like Sir Anthony Hopkins and Jay Leno. And by the way, Mitzi, you're looking. One day, John called me when he was about to do a podcast with me. And he said, Jim, you're the second person I interviewed today. The first one was Sir Anthony Hopkins. I said, John, you got a big day. Sir Anthony Hopkins and Jim Eskin in 1 hour. That's a good day. So, John, thank you for your role. And thank you all for making this a very fascinating, informative, and enjoyable 1 hour. So everyone, be well.